In the spring of 1984, a diver named Neil Pritt was searching Wasdale Lake for a missing college student when he stumbled upon a large piece of rolled up carpet tied to a block of concrete. Inside the carpet was the perfectly preserved body of an entirely different woman, a woman who had never been reported missing. Her name was Margaret Hogg. Welcome to Crime Soup Podcast. I'm Hannah Kanapis.
And I'm Kaylee.
And this week we'll be discussing the life and death of a woman named Margaret Hogg from Surrey, England. We also have a guest with us today. He's the host of another true crime podcast that I highly recommend called Peak True Crime, which focuses on cases from Derbyshire and the Peak District. I hope I
well done.
Right.
Congratulations. That was quite impressive, I have to say.
I had to look it up.
I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better than it could have been.
So I'm going to turn the time over to Shane from Peak True Crime so that he can introduce himself and tell us a bit about his podcast.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name's Shane, and I host. It's a UK true crime podcast, and it focuses on a part of the country that probably no one knows anything about. Would that be fair to say?
I've never heard of it, correct?
You've never heard of it. Great. Well, it's slap bang in the middle of the country. There's no coastline, which for an island is pretty impressive. And yeah, it's right in the middle of England. And what we're famous for? It is famous for the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, you're impressed now, aren't you? So yeah, it's quite a hilly mountainous area, but there's a city called Derby in it. Just it was famous for pottery, and Rolls-Royce are based here.
So Kaylee and I have prepared some questions for you specifically about what it's like being British. Okay. I wanted to give Kaylee the opportunity first because I know I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. So Kaylee.
So I am going to speak as a representative of 70 million people.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Obviously, if you get it wrong,
totally fair.
If you get it wrong, there might be international conflict. So, Kaylee, did you have any questions for Shane about British culture, British food, British language? What is it?
I do, actually. And the first question is, how dare you? And the context is beans on toast. And I have some questions about it.
Right, go on. How dare we?
Yes.
We did. Go on.
Is it just like literal beans on a piece of toast?
When you say beans, what do you mean?
I imagine like American sweet beans.
In the UK, traditionally, we don't have a great bean culture. We have Heinz baked beans. So these are white beans that are about half. I don't know what the actual bean is that's in there. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Okay, that answers my question then, because I know exactly what Heinz baked beans are.
Right, so that's Heinz baked beans. Basically, they're Heinz beans, and you have them on a piece of toast. Do you know what toast is?
I do. Unfortunately.
Right.
So maybe in the UK, Heinz baked beans are much less sweet because in the United States, there's like 30 grams of sugar and 1 can of.
I mean, they are quite sweet. I doubt they're as sweet as they have them in America.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That does change my opinion a little bit because I'm thinking about baked beans here slapped on a piece of toast, and I cannot imagine that being good. But then again, I don't like baked beans in general because I think they're too sweet. So
I looked up a list of supposed British phrases that I had never heard before. Most of them sound like they're made up.
Right, go on.
All phrases are made up, but yes.
Yeah.
Made up, the thing is... Well, so I wrote down some of the ones that I genuinely had never heard before. Right. And I know that the UK is vast. I mean, it makes up several countries. So if any of these are ones that you genuinely don't know, you can just say, oh, that's not from my region or whatever. But I wanted to...
You don't want me to lie? Because I could lie and make something up. So go on, fire away.
So I'm going to use them in a sentence. And these are the sentences that the website provided. The first one that I've never heard before is, would you take a butcher's at this broken bike for me?
Excuse me?
Right. Butchers is so that do you know that Cockney rhyming slang?
No.
In Cockneys, which are people from London, they will kind of pick a 2-3 word turn which represents another word. So they might go apples and pears, stairs. And what was the one that you said?
Butcher.
Okay, so butchers, as in butcher's hook, look. Butcher's hook rhymes with look. Apples and pears rhymes with stairs.
So that's where it comes from? They're just rhyming?
Yeah, they're like it's Cockney rhyming slang. So
do they love Dr. Seuss there?
No, they never heard of it.
Okay.
No, genuinely, I don't think people in this country know anything about Dr. Seuss.
Another one, it says, this road is chocker.
Is chocker means busy. I mean, it's not, it's a phrase I've used, but yeah, it means chock-a-block means busy.
This one, they said it was Cockney. So they said, this week's done me in already, and it's only Tuesday. I'm cream crackered.
Cream crackered rhymes with knackered.
And knackered means?
Exhausted.
Okay. Those Cockney. So if I don't know what they mean, I'll try and find a word that rhymes with what they just said and then try and figure out what that word means.
Yeah. I mean, you could go down a terrible pathway if you did something like that. But yes, you could. Yeah, because knackered, there's like a knacker's yard, which is where you send cattle and horses which are dying or dead. Where I live now, so I'm looking out at some farmers' fields, and if one of the horses died, you'd call the knacker man, and he'd come and collect the corpse of the dead horse.
Oh my gosh.
And so you call the knacker man, and he would take those lame or dying horses to the knacker's yard. So knackered, that's where that comes from.
Is that also what they would call a bouncer who would like remove someone who's heavily intoxicated? Is that the knacker man?
I mean, as far as I know, I don't think the bouncers in nightclubs have the legal justification to fire a bolt gun into somebody's head.
But they could
probably not
apply for the job, and they would have a similar resume.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, you'd want to just make sure they understood the difference between a horse and a human. But I think if that was the case, yeah, you'd be perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, can you pass this test?
Yeah,
this one's like
horse or human.
Okay, this one is my favorite.
Right, go on.
You've made a dog's dinner of that paint job.
It means honestly. Oh, good God, look at that. Oh, it looks like a right dog's dinner.
So how do you actually use that phrase? Like, you know what it is, but people actually use it in conversation?
I would do. So if someone invites you to their house and says, oh, I've just, he's put some shelves upstairs. Oh, really? Oh, God, they're awful. He's made a right dog's dinner of it. Oh, go up and just say something nice. Oh, they're really great.
Okay, now that Kaylee and I would call ourselves certified experts on all things UK now.
Definitely.
We're going to get ourselves killed. Kaylee and I are going to go to the UK one day, and we're going to get ourselves killed.
I don't think you have any problems at all. I think on your way to the bean shop, you'll go,
to the bean shop, my duck.
see, as a woman, you could get away with it. But yeah, no, I think you'd be absolutely fine. I can see there being no problems at all.
So now that we're experts, we're going to dive into a story that I had never heard before, and it's the story of a woman named Margaret Hogg. So let's talk a little bit about Margaret. So Margaret was working as a flight attendant for Air Europe when she met her future husband, a man named Peter, who was an air pilot 19 years older than her. Now, I couldn't find Margaret or Peter's exact birthdays anywhere, but she would have been about 24 years old when she married Peter, who would have been about 43 years old. And they got married on November 11th, 1963. Right off the bat, I always kind of see a red flag whenever there's a big age gap in marital relationships. What do you guys think?
After reading this outline, I looked at like a couple of different peer-reviewed studies, and I can link them or I can just tell you what they are. And the 5 different peer-reviewed studies that I read reference something called low relationship power, and it's prominent in relationships where there's a large age gap. And like saying this out loud, like I think everybody just knows kind of inherently because we recognize it. And the low relationship power can be due to like life experience, money, social influence. Peter was an airline pilot and Margaret was a flight attendant. There's obviously a large power dynamic there just within their like careers. And that's not inherently problematic. I don't think that's inherently problematic, but add in their age difference, and for sure there's an indication of low relationship power in Margaret's case without knowing anything else, just with those very straightforward facts, I would automatically assume Margaret has low relationship power.
The bit that struck me was the fact that there is this power dynamic that he is an airline pilot and she's an air stewardess. There's that thing, is that, you know, what first attracted you to a successful airline pilot? Well, it's the fact that he's a successful airline pilot.
So we don't actually know very much about their marriage, meaning like I really don't know hardly anything. And what little we do know is all from Peter's accounts, because as we'll discuss later, Margaret wasn't around anymore to give us her version of events.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Was Peter married before?
I don't have any indication of it.
I didn't see anything that he'd been married before.
Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like he was kind of an older bachelor whenever he married this much younger stewardess, which also could be another red flag. It depends.
Well, I can imagine from his point of view, he thought he was getting this glamorous young air hostess who was nearly a quarter of a century younger than it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an expectation of how she was going to behave when she was married.
So according to Peter Hogg, his wife began having an extramarital affair around 1973 after they'd been married for 10 years. Margaret's lover was an American bank executive named Graham Ryan, and their affair lasted for 3 years. Margaret and Graham were not discreet about their affair and actually spent the entire week prior to her disappearance together at a cottage in Dorset. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So I don't know anything about Dorset. Shane, do you know anything about Dorset?
It's incredibly pretty, and it's kind of rolling countryside, thatched cottages. It's probably about a couple of hours from London, but it's on the south coast of England. I mean, so do you know, it's where a lot of wealthy people retire to.
Gotcha. Okay, so it makes sense that two lovers would run away to Dorset for
yeah, no, it's a very kind of, you know, you could find yourself a beautiful little thatched cottage, and there'd be like an old English pub next door, and you could it's an ideal kind of place for a romantic break.
Okay, so what we know that happens next is about a month after Margaret has this romantic getaway with her lover. Her husband, Peter, goes to the police and he reports her missing, but he also kind of tells them that he wasn't concerned for her well-being and he believed that she had simply run away with her lover, Graham. Peter Hogg went on with his life and probably would have flown under the radar for a long time if it weren't for the fateful disappearance of another woman. So, side story, there was a 21-year-old college student from Paris named Veronique Mireille-Marais. In July of 1983, a 21-year-old college student named Veronique was staying at the Wasdale Youth Hostel in the Lake District and was last seen leaving a local pub headed toward a lake called Wastwater. Am I saying that right?
Right, can I just interject here?
Yes.
You've done wonderfully. Wasdale, Wastwater, you've done brilliantly.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this area?
The Lake District is another national park, and the lake itself is apparently the deepest lake in England. I find it a bit embarrassing to have these conversations with American people because it's not really that deep.
No, it's not.
There's a puddle in Wisconsin which is exactly the same size. It's like, what is it? I don't know. I wrote it down. 300 meters deep. And I mean, Scafell Pike, which I think is the tallest mountain in England, is 1,000 foot tall.
What?
That's right, isn't it? Is that right? I wrote this down the other day. 1,000 meters.
Oh, okay. So
what's that? 3,000 feet.
Yeah. See, and I'm from Utah, where we're known for our mountains, and I climbed a mountain a few years ago that was like 13,000 feet.
That's basically Kilimanjaro.
The English Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue with our story about Veronique. After Veronique goes missing, police search this 4-mile-long lake of Wastwater, but they can't find any trace of her. 7 months later, in February of 1984, an amateur diver named Neil Pritt was exploring Wasdale Lake when he stumbled upon a large piece of rolled-up carpet anchored with a heavy concrete block about 110 feet below the surface. Pritt called the police and several divers dragged the bundle of carpet ashore. When they opened it, they were shocked to find that it wasn't missing college student Veronique, but an obviously middle-aged woman whose body had been perfectly preserved like wax. Wastwater Lake is very cold, almost always hovering around 44 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius, and it contains fresh water, which is a near perfect environment for preventing decay.
Apparently, I was reading something about it, and they said that it was so cold that her makeup had still been preserved under
Oh
the
my
water.
gosh.
What? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
But but apparently this thing was knocking around at the bottom of the lake for ages, and people just moving it.
Well, because how long after was this? So she went missing in 73, and now this is 1984. So like 10 years. She'd been in the lake for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So they pull her ashore, and her body is perfectly preserved. What they find is that her body is half naked. It's bound into a fetal position with electrical cables, and her head has a dry cleaning bag over it. On her finger was a plain gold wedding band with an inscription that read Margaret 111163 Peter, which seems like a key piece of evidence.
Yeah. You don't have to be Poirot for that one, do you?
This is a case that even I could solve, and I have no training. So a woman named Jillian Seddon very quickly contacted police after these details were published in the newspapers because Mrs. Seddon had been Peter and Margaret Hogg's former housekeeper, and she knew that November 11th, 1963 was their wedding date. So on March 4th, 1984, Peter Hogg was arrested, and he was charged with his wife's murder. At his trial, Peter pled not guilty and argued that he killed Margaret in self-defense. According to Peter, the couple was engaged in mutual violence when he, quote unquote, accidentally strangled his wife.
Damn, I hate it when that happens, personally.
Honestly, you know what happens more often than you think.
I'm on like my fifth husband already.
Yeah.
They just have such weak necks.
It takes 5 minutes to strangle someone to death.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not the kind of thing you go,
You can't
oh.
accidentally do it.
Well, no, because I looked at there was some newspaper reports from the time, and he says how I strangled her until she went quiet. Well, no, I think she would have gone quiet and then passed out.
Yeah.
And then another 4.5 minutes later, she would have died.
Yeah. I think you're recounting your evidence wrong, my guy. Like,
well, you know what it made me think of, Kaylee?
Hmm.
Do you remember our episode on Sarah Stern?
Yeah.
Shane, so we did an episode about a 19-year-old girl who was murdered by her best friend, who was also, I think, a 19 or 20-year-old young man. And he attempted to strangle her, and he underestimated just how long and how much force it required. And he spent a good 30 minutes before she died.
Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not like accidental and straightforward. It takes a long time to do it, especially if you're not doing it right, I guess. Not that I would know.
You would have to do it with intention. Like your intent would have to be to kill them, because
like, even if I gave Peter the benefit of the doubt in like accidentally strangling Margaret, and she was attacking him and he was trying to prevent her from attacking him, he would still have to strangle her more than what was absolutely necessary to make her stop. Yeah, in order to kill her.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, it's like I said, they pass out and then it stops.
Exactly. And I think that would deter her, even if she had been able to like regain consciousness and assess the situation from that point. I don't think she would have continued attacking him, because she would have been passed out and groggy, and like that would have been really painful as well. Yeah.
Well, even the language he uses, because at the trial he said she came at him like a tiger. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Keep in mind that, so we only have his version of events, right? And the way that he describes it, he doesn't describe any lead up to what caused her to supposedly attack him. It just apparently comes out of nowhere. So his description is just, she just flew at me in a rage. There's no description of like, well, why was she angry? Like, what caused it and why was she angry? And so you're trying to tell me that you were just in the kitchen doing the dishes and she came flying at you and tried to kill you.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like he had more motive to be angry than she did. She just got back from a romantic getaway with her lover, with her banker boyfriend.
Because he says something like, oh, when she walked in at lunchtime, the row began. Hogg described how Margaret came at him like a tiger, scratching, punching and kicking. I just lost control and grabbed her throat with both my hands and squeezed until she stopped screaming. He said, all right. I quickly realised I had to get rid of her body.
Oh my gosh. Very quickly, actually.
I did think about the police, but only fleetingly.
Okay, let's talk about
Okay,
this.
Peter.
So I want to talk about what he does next. So like we just described, he says his wife just flew at him basically in a rage, was kicking and scratching him and hitting him. So he grabs her by the throat, accidentally kills her, but he says it's basically in self-defense. According to his statements at trial, Peter claims that his wife started it and that her strangulation was accidental. After realizing that Margaret was dead, he allegedly rolled up her body in the carpet and drove her out to Westwater the next night, so a day later. He then transported her body out to the middle of the lake in an inflatable rowboat and tipped her body over the side, weighted with a concrete block.
Okay. I know he's trying to say this was accidental, but I don't know who the fuck has an inflatable rowboat. Just like maybe people do. I don't know. But in my mind, I don't have an inflatable rowboat and I live by water. Like
Do you know what? If you were my wife, I'd feel safe.
She's not prepared to commit murder.
Do you know what? If she's not going to get the stuff in advance, I don't think she'll bother. But do you know what? Because I was looking into this, and he created an alibi for himself for the night. Now it's pretty good going, 12 years or whatever before he got caught. But he drove to his son's school, presumably with her in the boot,
the trunk.
And yes,
for our American listeners,
yeah. So he stuck her in the trunk and drove to his son's school, which is in Taunton, which is hours away, and then said, "Oh yes, I'll take you home to London tomorrow, down to Surrey tomorrow. So yes, I'll just go and stay in a hotel overnight." Checked into a hotel, then drove all the way up to the Lake District, which is like, I mean, it must be about 5 hours, and apparently picked up the concrete on the way.
But he already had the inflatable rowboat.
Yeah. Okay, do we think that this was planned in advance? That's my question for both of you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, what makes you think, like, how far in advance?
At least a couple months. At least as long as he knew about Margaret leaving with, what's his name, Gary? Graham, sorry. As long as he knew about Margaret leaving with Graham, I think he was planning it. I think he thought it would be a perfect time. So whenever he knew about Margaret leaving is when I think he started to plan it personally, because it's just lines up too perfectly. He could just say that she ran away with Graham, and he had all of this time between her coming back and her being gone a couple days after she supposedly came back to be like, well, I guess she just left me for real this time.
Yeah, because apparently she talked about it a lot. Because he goes on about, she threatened to leave all the time, but she never did. I mean, I wonder how much of an option she had to leave.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. If she's having this long-term affair, why is she staying?
Is she benefiting from the relationship with Peter somehow still?
They're both well off, though, right? You said that Graham was this wealthy bank executive. Maybe he just didn't want to marry her.
Well, he had a family, didn't he?
Oh, is that what it was?
I don't know how premeditated it was, but I don't think it was the idea that it's a crime of passion. And, you know what? If she wasn't just such a, I wouldn't have killed her. That doesn't really quite a lot of ice, I don't think.
So let's talk about what happens next. So, as mentioned previously, Westwater is the deepest lake in England, but only in certain parts. So Peter most likely chose this particular lake in hopes that his wife's body would never be recovered. So that definitely shows planning right there.
Well, he went to school in Keswick,
which is
near
the Lake
too
District.
Far away, right?
It's an hour's walk away.
So he was like, I know a place.
Yeah. There's that lake nearby. It's just not deep enough. Oh, God. I could find one that was just a bit deeper.
So Peter most likely chose this lake in hopes that his wife's body would never be recovered. But as fate would have it, he missed the deepest part of the lake by only a few yards. So bad luck. Margaret's body settled on a ledge that was at only 110 feet deep, which even an amateur diver could have found. Margaret's body could have sunk all the way down, and this is where I wrote it down. So the deepest part is 258 feet, in which case she probably wouldn't have been found.
No.
Because who's going down that deep?
You know, I was saying how they'd kind of moved it around. Because it was a place where people dived a lot. And it was just this bit of all stuff rolled up in a bit of polystyrene and stuff, plastic and stuff, and they just shifted it around.
That's what I heard, that the local Navy divers would use it in their exercises.
Yeah, they were just enthusiastic amateur divers, and they were moving it around all the time.
What?
Yes,
yeah.
They didn't know.
They never opened it?
No.
They weren't like, this sure looks fucking suspicious.
Maybe there's a lot of carpet down there.
Okay, when you said they were moving it around, I thought you meant like the boats or whatever, or the tide, not the tide, but like
people.
It was
divers.
Just moving it around because of the way the water was moving. I didn't think people were actually pushing it around.
No, it was first noticed in December 1983, but failed to lift it to the surface because it was heavy. Apparently, it looked nothing like a body.
People don't listen to enough true crime, because if I saw a rolled up carpet at the bottom of a lake and I was a diver, I'd be like, there's a fucking body in there.
I've got a chocolate Labrador and I take it out every day. There's like fields and stuff behind the house. And a number of times I thought, maybe this will be the day.
Yeah.
This will be the day.
I'm gonna find
You'd
something
like that, wouldn't you, Shane?
I think I would. But the other, about how long ago was it? It was a couple of years ago, and this is terrible. There was there's like an old Victorian dump, which doesn't sound too poetic, but so like a landfill sort of thing. It's not very big. It's just where they cleared a load of stuff out, and it had rained, and as I was walking the dog, this forearm of what looked like a baby come out of the ground. It was a doll.
Oh my God.
But I was like, holy fuck. I've hit the mother load.
Oh my God. Not just a dead body, a dead baby. Because
this is like double bubble. This is.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't. It was just a doll.
Shane,
you're this close, Shane.
Honestly, I crushed. Absolutely crushed.
You thought this was going to be your big break.
I did. I could get a really good podcast series out of this.
This dead baby. Oh my God. Okay.
But it wasn't.
It was just a doll.
It's
always a mannequin.
Yeah.
Okay, so Margaret's body, it doesn't hit the deepest part of the lake. It hits a shelf at only 110 feet, and that's how it was able to be found. But for 8 years, Peter really thought that he'd gotten away with the perfect crime, and in a way, he actually still did. Considerate evidence was presented about Margaret's affair with Graham Ryan, and the sympathetic jury returned a verdict of manslaughter, and Peter Hogg was sentenced to 4 years in prison, which included 1 year for perjury in his divorce proceedings. It took the jury just over an hour to find him not guilty of murder.
I am unwell. Like, damn, folks, if you want to get away with murder, just stage the infidelity of your spouse, and the jury will be so sad for you. Like, so sad.
All you've got to do is be a bloke and say whoever the woman is. Well, she was putting it out a bit, wasn't she? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But I
mean, you're right. Like, if you paint her as a whore and say, "Oh, she was cheating on me. I'm this poor, sad man, and it wasn't my fault."
And I acted in a fit of rage because I was so wronged.
Yeah, I mean, the coverage in the press is wife who played the field.
Oh my God.
Passionate temptress Margaret Hogg kept 2 men on a taut love string for more than 3 years until one finally snapped and killed her. The Old Bailey had. It's though, it was a matter of time before one of them did it.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, but how much has really changed, Kaylee? Let's be honest.
Not a lot, but I'm always like outrageously disappointed and never surprised. So here I am being outrageously disappointed once again.
You don't sound surprised though.
No.
Not even a little bit.
Okay, but you have to admit 4 years is egregious.
Yes. Like, Peter knew about the affair for years leading up to this, so it's less believable to me that he just got so angry and like snapped and lost it in a fit of rage and strangled her.
Do you know what? It's gone on for so long. You've got to go, well, if you were that bothered by it, you'd have done something about it before now. And I don't mean you could have killed her earlier.
I mean, like, you would have potentially killed her earlier, because that was something I thought, like, it would be more believable after just finding out about the affair, although obviously still not acceptable.
No.
It would be much more believable, though, that he, like, snapped.
But who snaps after, like,
3 years of knowing that their wife is cheating on them? So the fact that he knew about the affair and then cited it as his reason that he lost control, that like shows planning to me.
This is what I don't understand, though, is that she just went missing. Peter reported it to the police and said, "Oh, my wife's missing, but I think she ran away with her lover." Wouldn't that be easy to verify, 1? And 2, did Graham not say anything to anyone?
Well, he was also an American banker, so he was out of the country.
But right? You're like years-long girlfriend or lover just stops returning your phone calls after you have a really romantic getaway, like,
what is it gonna do? Call Peter? Be like, yo, where's
Well,
my girlfriend?
It's nonsense. It's like, I just find it, you go, these are different times, don't you? And you hope that things change.
this poor woman. It just seems like I couldn't find any information about her, her family. It doesn't look like anyone really was looking for her after she disappeared.
I found some information courtesy of the papers.
Oh,
She was attractive, buxom, and had a reputation for promiscuity that stretched back to her teenage years. So, I mean, that's painted a really
Damn.
objective and sympathetic image of the victim, isn't it?
Yeah.
oh,
She's been a
buxom.
slut her whole damn life.
Yeah, even as a teenager.
Yeah. Like, even if she was, she didn't deserve to die. What the hell?
No, and that's what gets me about it. That's what gets me about the entire thing.
Hate it.
I mean, this is quite a novelty for me because with my podcast, it's just me on my own. So I just sit there and there's kind of moody music in the background of me going, and it wasn't until the fourth day that the body was found, lay at the bottom of the creek.
I love it.
Creeks. But that's so now I don't do any rampant speculation, but I'm off the hook now. Honestly, I feel liberated. I've never felt more alive.
You're hanging with us. We
just throw out accusations.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
No. We need to get lawyers is what we need.
Hmm.
Okay. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, this was bullshit.
Did I ruin your week?
Always, yeah.
I can't help take that personally. I find the idea it was manslaughter utterly laughable.
If we had been in the jury, it would have turned out differently.
Oh, he'd have been
a riot in the jury.
Okay, I'm going to sign us off.
Okay.
Yes.
So thanks for tuning in for this week's episode of Crime Soup. Be sure to find us on social media and let us know your thoughts on this case. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We also have an awesome website, crimesouppodcast.com, where you can listen to all past episodes and buy your very own Crime Soup merch. And if you'd like even more true crime content, be sure to follow our friend Shane from Peak True Crime to learn more about cases from the UK. So Shane, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
I don't know what it's called this week, but currently it started out as Twitter and now it's become X. So it could be anything, but it's on. Yeah, if you just search Peak True Crime on any of the social media things or on your podcast machine or wherever you find things like that.
Beautiful. So as always, we'll see you guys next week. Stay safe and bon appetit.